Welcome to Transparency with Diana B., a podcast from wealthmanagement.com focused on advisors' personal well-being and healing. In this podcast, we explore some of the deepest struggles and hardships that many advisors face and bring these issues out into the open so that others may find healing. Join us for this journey where we explore ways to overcome the stresses and anxieties as Diana draws from years of expertise and guest experts to manage the personal challenges of advisors.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Transparency with Diana B., a podcast by wealthmanagement.com. My name is Diana Britton, and I'm the managing editor of wealthmanagement.com. For those of you who are new to the podcast, each episode focuses on a personal development issue facing financial advisors. Guests join me to talk about their own experiences dealing with a struggle and their path to healing. My guest today is Hui-chin Chen. She's a certified financial planner and owner of Pavlov Financial Planning. Hui-chin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I know while the DC region is typically her home base, she's been in Saint Lucia, an island in the Caribbean, for about a year. Her husband was sent there through his job with the US government. This podcast is going to be a little different from others I've done because we're going to talk about the coronavirus and how the spread of this pandemic is impacting the lives of financial advisors. So we've all been impacted by COVID-19 in some ways, although some folks have been impacted more than others. It's upended lives. It's caused most non-essential businesses and even cultural institutions to shutter. I never thought I'd see Broadway close. But it's caused millions in the U.S. to lose their jobs. Unemployment claims are climbing every day. For those who haven't lost their jobs, it's resulted in a new normal of working from home, many while also taking care of kids whose schools are shut down. Panic buying has caused shortages of food and much needed medical supplies. It's just completely it's a completely chaotic time right now for all of us, including me. I'm at home in my basement right now, working from home. My kids are here, so you may hear them in the background. It's just the way things are right now. But, advisors, of course, are not immune to the effects that are going on around us. So, Hui-chin, I wanted you to tell me a little bit about the roller coaster ride that you and your husband have been on over the last few months.
Sure. I guess for me, the COVID-19 actually escalated not as quickly as some people might feel in the US. I'm originally from Taiwan, so my family was impacted very early on, being right next to China and having the news coming out with a SARS-like virus. So so basically, my mind has been on this since January. So for me, it's a long 3 months already.
Yeah, you're a little ahead of us in
in
the panic mode.
Yeah, I think also because of that, it helped me gain a little bit of perspective instead of sort of being directly thrown into a very short timeline. My timeline is slightly longer. We have our own sort of roller coaster ride in March. It's basically just the last couple weeks. My husband's employer, basically right before, I guess if, since the timeline is so shortened, the couple of weeks ago, that's when the State Department announced the highest level of warning, telling all U.S. citizens overseas to go home. Otherwise shelter in place. So right around that time, my husband's employer, the government, like his program, sent all the volunteers home. And so basically at that point, because we're under chief of mission at the embassy. So it's up to the embassy to decide whether it's an order departure or authorized departure. So we never went on to order departure, meaning you can choose to go or not. Okay. And basically within that few days, where we are, the Saint Lucia closed its borders from incoming passenger flights. It basically also means that, there's no flights out since there's no sort of national airline carrier. Yeah, so then things escalated from a few days later, it turns into a partial lockdown, essential services only, but you could still go get groceries. And that's when I talked to you last. Mm-hmm. And then just, I guess, 2 days ago, because they're now community transmission, that they wasn't able to trace the source of how some people got sick. So they went into a 24-hour curfew. So even grocery stores are now not allowed to open.
Wow. So, I mean, that's even more, I guess, what is a 24-hour lockdown exactly? I mean, you can't leave, nobody can leave their homes at all, or, because that sounds more severe than what's going on here in the US.
Yes. So I haven't heard many countries go into it, although several Caribbean islands have, because I think that's, a smaller population. Basically, the directive is do not go outside of your yard, cannot go to your neighbors, and all the businesses are shut down, so there's no business to go to. Only people with permits are able to be on the road. So people are police, firefighters, medical workers, things like that.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And what about getting food and things that you need, medical prescriptions or?
Yeah, so that was a huge, the news actually came sort of later in the evening. So I think there are, residents in the country are sort of caught off guard, not necessarily because they don't see that coming, but more perhaps, due to financial situation, they weren't able to stock up quickly anyway.
Yeah.
So I've read there are definitely people getting affected, so that government actually came up with like a quick reprieve for them to, like today actually, so like allowing some neighborhood store to open a few hours so people can get bread and things like that.
Yeah. Wow. Have they said how long they're going to keep that in place, or it's just unknown at this time?
It's supposed to go to April 7th, so a week.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, how did you feel? Because you guys were sort of sheltering in place before there was the order to go back to the U.S. And then all of a sudden there was that order to go, and you guys were packing up and getting ready to leave, right? And then it was the borders closed, so you were back to sheltering in place and having to stock up on, essentials, right? Tell us about how you felt during that time when you're going from sheltering in place to leaving and back again, and now with this new development as well.
Yeah, well, I guess the financial planner in me just feel annoyed because I can't plan for it. Like those are basically having to basically leave on evacuation orders versus having to stock up so you can stay at home for weeks on end are two very different ways you have to be prepared for. It's basically exact opposite. And when you have to prepare for both, it's kind of like it just makes you kind of get crazy, right? Like, if I do this, that's the exactly opposite of doing the other thing. But it get done eventually.
Yeah.
We do have enough, I guess, food and perishables to last us for a while, even with the shutdown. So, but we also have our bags packed still. So if I don't see an order coming to immediately evacuate any point at this, but there's also the possibility that if you do get sick, then you might need to get medically evacuated. So.
Having the fact that you have a bag packed, is that part of being a financial planner in a way? Because that's part of your job, is to help clients plan for emergencies and to have a backup plan. And is that part, I mean, does that sort of play into being a financial planner, is having that bag packed and ready to go whenever you need to?
I would say it's probably more of a working for U.S. government overseas training.
Okay.
They always talked about the go bag. And if you talk to, military families and foreign service families, they're all very familiar with that concept. Just
Sure.
imagine that, the people who got evacuated, like all the people got evacuated from China, and they only can bring, the essentials with them. So it's the same concept. But I think because of that training, I do also, and also a lot of my clients have the same, situation, like we do, working for U.S. governments abroad. Yeah, many of my clients, either through working with me or through their own life circumstances, do have more of a sense of prepping for, not necessarily prepping for emergency, but just really have the mindset of being able to be flexible
Hmm.
when a huge change such suddenly struck you. And I think when I was thinking about it the other day, that's really one, blessing, I guess, going into that kind of huge situation is that, I am more or less having lived that kind of life, that be needing to be prepared on a constant basis.
Yeah. And I mean, unlike a lot of other folks in the US, you've been following this virus for a long time now. And, with your family being in Taiwan, tell us about that. And, sort of how do you think that that sort of helped you to deal with the stress of the situation, sort of being in it for a long time now?
I think the one of the positive side of having, like I said earlier, having, see kind of like seeing this train coming from further away,
Mm,
um, is that, you sort of see how other people are responding to it and different ways of responding to it. I don't know if I mentioned this when we talked last time, but we were actually posted in China up until about a year ago, so we still
oh, wow.
have friends and acquaintances there.
Mm,
And so when it first happened, you you sort of get a sense of the urgency there. And
mm,
then in Taiwan, there's also a sense of urgency. When SARS happened in Taiwan, I was in college, and I remember things being canceled and taking things seriously.
mm.
So, and basically, the information I've gotten since January is that you need to, you know, not take it as something that will go away quickly.
Mm,
That because you've been following it for a while, you know that things escalate, not necessarily it would just escalate quickly and then disappear quickly.
yeah, right.
So having seeing a more sort of like a timeline and how different governments or different individuals being dealing with this in their day-to-day life actually also give me hope, right? Because the now in China, many of our friends are not necessarily going back to normal, but they're sort of like getting out of the complete lockdown mode.
Hmm.
So you can sort of course, there are a lot of discussions on like maybe there will be a second wave, but at least you're seeing the response of how you can get out. And
Yeah.
also in Taiwan, the but the government took it very seriously in the very beginning. So they're actually still at a stage where there's not widespread community
Mm,
spread. Most of the cases are still being caught at port of entry, and people are still living a normal life. Like kids are still going to school.
yeah.
So so you can see like very different responses, and knowing there's a way forward instead of being caught in a panic mode just because things are going really badly locally.
Yeah, I think for me, I've been, when I first started hearing about it in, February, I was like thinking this is overblown. It's not going to get bad. And then it went from 0 to 60 real fast, and our life was completely turned upside down. But I think, like, having the perspective that you had in seeing how other people had dealt with it, how it was impacting real lives overseas, was a good perspective to have to deal with it yourself as it escalates. I mean, other ways that you're sort of coping and dealing with the stress. I mean, we all sort of have our things, right, that bring us a little happiness. For me, it's like lighting a candle.
Yeah.
That smells good. I mean, it's just like little things, but how are you coping? How are you dealing with the stress of the situation?
Yeah, I guess a little bit background. I've been running my practice. Well, I guess since I'm overseas, you can tell I work from home.
Yeah.
And I've been doing so for over 5 years. So through that, I have really over time developed a mindset and routine that I really need to do what's most important to me at the very beginning of the day. Otherwise, it's like priorities, right? Like otherwise, you would feel like
you won't get done, or
you won't get done, or you would just because your workspace and your living space the same. It's very easy to jump directly into work or caring about client stuff without thinking about yourself first.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I did, sort of a small routine that I developed, was always do what I think is important in the morning, or like the first thing, right? So basically, since all this COVID-19 things went down, those haven't changed, and actually developed a little bit more. Always exercise the first thing, and talk to my family in Taiwan, and the time zone actually match ups as well, because for them it's in the evening, and it's sort of like the best time for me to talk to them is my sort of early in the morning. So exercise and being connected with people far away. Yeah. And before before the lockdown, like one other routine is like making lunch for my husband so he can take it to work. So it's like kind of like, it's like the important things that I get done. So maybe sometimes I don't get to really get to client work until much later. For some people, and it might be like 10 or 11, and some people think, oh, you don't start work until 10 or 11.
Yeah.
But for me, because I've already done what I think is the most important things in my life, I can be more focused and have my time more bunched up to be very efficient.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good strategy. What how has the conditions changed in terms of how you serve your clients or how you run your practice? Has it affected that at all? I know you already were working from home for many years, but anything in terms of how you're working with clients changed since this happened?
Not the day to day. I think just for many people as well, you feel like March is very long because you feel like there's always new things. And I think as planners, we're in sort of the position to care, sometimes even care before the clients know what's coming. So, and given all the new information that's coming out, especially with the CARES Act and all the reprieve for your clients, I feel like there was more of, on my part, I feel like I need to have more close connection or closer communication with clients.
Sure.
Even though sometimes they don't necessarily need it. So I think it's also a balancing act. For me, I never go too directly into, not very many of my clients was sort of like too much in a panic mode when the market started dropping in February. But there are also sort of clients who are more eager because the market is dropping. It's like, oh, we should go ahead and invest everything right now. And without thinking about, well, why if you don't have a job, after 2 weeks because the new lockdown down measures and things like that. So I think it's one thing I've been doing more is also try to anticipate a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
for clients, but not necessarily trying to be alarmist and sort of like trying to alert clients when it's not necessary, but sort of like being there mentally a little bit before the clients might be thinking about what's wrong. Also, like for example, in February, because I've been following the situation since January.
Mm-hmm.
In February, when the market tanked, what I send out to the clients, it's not, oh, don't worry about the market. I actually tell them that we need to start thinking about what happens when you kids cannot go to school, and what happens if you lose your job. Like making sure emergency fund still at what we talked about or even more. But beyond that, don't worry about having to stop, your 401k contributions and things like that. And even start to, bring your own pen if you need to sign credit card receipts, right?
Yeah.
And like all those things, like I started knowing since January because all the because people are already prepared for that in Asia and perhaps not as much in the US.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a balance there, and it is impacting already real lives and real people. I was just talking to my neighbor today, and she lost her job, and it's quickly taking effect. Well, I mean, I'm just wondering, has it taken any sort of, has it impacted your business at all, like profitability or revenues that you're bringing in? I mean, obviously, I imagine some of your revenues are AUM based, or based on the market appreciation, and we're seeing some dip there.
Actually don't do AUM.
Okay.
So my fees are, my income actually not impacted, other than I do offer, because this crazy time, I do have clients that are either let go or like furloughed, or their business income drastically reduced, and I'm offering these clients to temporarily stop their payments, but I'm still, keeping them in the loop to, making sure they're, getting the, the help they need from CARES Act and everything. So perhaps just impact, only a few clients get impacted so far. So the income hasn't been, drastically impacted for me.
Yeah, that's good. But that's good that you're still there for them and helping them through this. Any other advice for financial planners who are struggling with the stress during this time? Anything else that you'd like to tell others that are in similar situations?
I think one thing I've been trying to or project or bring to people around me, whether my clients or family, is really be able to pause, even sort of feel like the freight train is running as over. I think a lot of people, because the collective atmosphere, there is a sense of, oh, I need to do this now. Either go to grocery store, maybe it's true you do, but sell my investments, invest more, on the other end, immediately apply for loans, I immediately cut certain spending even though it's very much needed. I think there is a lot of that anxiousness, and that translate into wanting to act immediately when you feel like there's something you can do.
Yes.
And what I've been trying to do is not telling people not to do that, but sort of like projecting more of a, yes, those things are important, but even if you wait for another day to do it, it's probably okay.
Yeah, take a breather.
Or wait for a week. Not to say that things will definitely get better because you waited, but more, I think a lot of those actions, when you really think about it,
knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah, it's more like you feel like maybe you do it will make you feel better, But
Mhm.
even if you do it immediately, it doesn't necessarily make you feel better. So when I get anxious like that, when I feel like, especially, thinking about client situations, like, oh, I should tell them this, 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 this. And what I would do is when I notice that I'm getting into that kind of situation, I will mentally have a picture of, I have a box, and I will put all of those things in and close the box.
Mhm.
And I'm a Christian, so in my mind, I'm praying, and like, this is, I'm merely human. I cannot solve all these things,
Mm.
and only God can. I give this to God, and that will immediately calm me down. And so, for if you don't have faith, or you don't believe in that kind of thing, but I think it was still helpful if you can take a moment, like you said, to breathe and have a mental picture of all of those things that you were thinking about, worrying about, or sometimes even just write them down.
Yeah.
And in the good times, we were thinking about, that's like a time hack, right? You can prioritize things, but also in bad times, I think that's also helpful if you can have that visual of everything that's on your mind, that's really stressing you out, and just pick out the one thing that you are able to deal with right now. I think that would be kind of like I feel like collectively, if we can all project some level of calmness, I think we'll all find the better way forward.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. For me, when this sort of escalated, I was kind of like, how did we get to this point? We were just fine and going to work, and everything was normal, and we were planning vacations and, working on our house. And now it's like, well, how did we get to this point? But somebody told me, let's reframe this situation, and think about it like this. We are very blessed. We have everything we need. We have supplies. We have, our kids are safe. We have we're able to work from home, which not everybody can. So that's like such a good thing. And so that's sort of a little bit of what's helped me get through this time. But we're just about out of time right now. Hui-chin, thank you so much for being on and just being so open about this. And I know that for me, at least, you've really brought some level of calmness about this. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I'm able to help.
If you yourself have a struggle and you'd wish to share your experiences and help others in similar situations, please feel free to reach out to me at transparencywithdianab@gmail.com. I'd like to thank you for listening to Transparency with Diana B. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe button below. This is Diana Britton reminding you that where there is healing, there is hope. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Transparency with Diana B podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of wealthmanagement.com. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice. Always seek the advice of your healthcare provider with any questions you have regarding your particular situation.